John Falchicchio. I'm the Acting Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and I want to thank you for joining us for our business community TeleTown Hall. We've got a really full agenda, so I don't want to speak too long before getting to my colleagues and some of our guests, but just wanted to mark, since we last were together, we had a really big moment for DC when last Friday the Congress or the House of Representatives passed the DC statehood bill, HR 51. And so we want to give a shout out to our colleagues in the Senior Advisor's Office, as well as in the Office of Federal and Regional Affairs, just for all their work on the statehood push. Also, last week we had some excitement in that we moved to phase 2 and allowed further businesses to begin operations or expand the operations that they had underway. If you have questions about phase 2 or want to see all the latest guidance that we have for phase 2, you can see it, view it at coronavirus.dc.gov/phase 2. So we look for updates to be posted about that. Today, the mayor talked about guidance for private gatherings. We know with the holiday weekend coming up that people will want to get together, but there is a safe way to do it, and we want to make sure that you have all the latest guidance. So if you go to coronavirus.dc.gov/phase 2, you'll find all the guidance for business operations, as well as new guidance about private gatherings. Also, wanted to make sure that everyone keeps their eye on the budget. The mayor proposed her budget a few weeks ago, and now the council committees have done their work. They'll present the full budget in early July and then take 2 votes on the budget. So we ask the business leaders who are on this call to make sure that you keep an eye on that process at the council. And so today we have, like I said, a really full agenda where we have Dr. Unique Morris-Hughes from the Department of Employment Services and some of her colleagues to talk a little bit more about the programs that they have as you try to navigate through the pandemic response and as we think about recovery. I know that the mayor has charged the district's economic recovery team with thinking about all the ways that we can help. And so today we're going to highlight some of the ways that we can do that through the Department of Employment Services. And Unique has joined us today, and we know is quite busy because tomorrow also marks July 1st, which is both the first day that the paid family leave program will go into effect, and it is also the date in which the minimum wage in the District of Columbia will be $15 an hour. And so that process that we started some years ago in the fight for 15 will actually achieve that tomorrow on July 1. And so before we go to Dr. Hughes and the team at DOES and some of the guests that they have with them, I want to go to Savangoy Cook to just give you an update on what has been going on in the Business Development Unit in Demphead. Savangoy?
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. Thank you again. It's exciting to be here before you all, and I really just wanted to highlight again the importance of this particular conversation today as we think about recovery for businesses and the resources that are available, where it be grants or loans or technical assistance. I think it's important that we also think about our residents and how we are getting them back to work as well, and the resources that are available for businesses more specifically as they look to retain their existing team, their staff, and then potentially also hire and bring on and recruit new employees. And so I think there is a lot of intersections and interconnectedness between the work that's happening and the resources that we're trying to provide to businesses, and that's the relevance of this conversation today. And while we have Dr. Unique Morris-Hughes here and her team to talk more about some of the resources that our small businesses here can take advantage of as they're thinking about preserving their existing staff, and then also opportunities to even attract new talent. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass it along to Dr. Unique Morris-Hughes to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Director Cook and Deputy Mayor Falchicchio. There's one other really important activity that occurred that we are in the throes of, which is MBSYEP. And for everybody who is watching from home or from their office, under the leadership of the mayor, expanded the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program to ages 22 to 24, which is a really, really big deal. And so we started MBSYEP last Monday and have had an overwhelming positive response from the business community and families as well. So we are, I got to find a new word for busy, but we are in the throes of it. And so I'll share a little bit about what I call some economic tools that we think can not only help the business community, but those employees of the business community as well. Next slide, please. One more slide. Awesome. So I'll talk a little bit about UI by the numbers and where we're at today. Also talk about economic assistance or tools that we have available. Give a high-level overview of eligibility for UI in the age of COVID-19. Two special provisions that were added through the CARES Act, which is FPUC and PEUC. I also talked about pandemic unemployment assistance. And then my tax chief, Ryan Moore-Lee, who is amazing, is going to talk about the shared work program and what returning back to work looks like. And then we'll hear from a couple of folks who've had an opportunity to take advantage of the PUA program. Next slide, please. So UI by the numbers, since March 13th, we've had over 116,000 individuals file for unemployment, of which 73,000 have been paid out, totaling over $618 million from the trust fund and from federal reimbursements paid out to individuals who have filed claims. And we're currently in the process of processing another 14,000 claims. One of the things that we are paying very, very close attention to and potentially preparing for an additional surge is we know that the PPP loans come to an end and that there may be some individuals who may be out of work that need to file for UI, and we may have folks, or we're seeing folks begin to return back to work. So we are preparing ourselves at the DC Department of Employment Services potentially for another surge in our local economy here. Next slide, please. So economic benefits available at DOES. So we do have economic benefits available, and I will go through them in the next slide. But first, it's important to understand eligibility. In order to be eligible for our traditional UI program, you must have either lost your job through no fault of your own or had your wages or salary limited. Now, because of the CARES Act, there are expanded eligibility requirements that we've been able to put into place. Independent contractors and gig workers are also eligible for extended benefits, which I will talk about next. Next slide. So the first, and let me say this, you know, there are so many acronyms in government, and not that we needed any more acronyms, but I have two more to throw into the mix here, which is FPUC and PEUC. FPUC is short for Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, and it went into effect March 29th. It ends July 25th. So this is very, very important that everybody pays attention to the end date. For FPUC, it's an additional $600 per week on top of current regular UI benefits. So that's what we call a plus up. So it's on top of our maximum weekly benefit, which is currently $444. Benefits will be automatically updated if you qualify and if you're currently receiving UI benefits. So if you're already receiving them, you didn't have to do anything else to get the additional $600, and it was paid retroactively from the day of the claim as early as March 29th. The next is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program, and that's effective March 29th through December 31st, and it's an additional 13 weeks of UI benefits, plus the $600, which, remember, expires July 25th. So it's really, really important if you know an individual that has been out of work to have them go ahead and apply for this extended benefit, because they are also eligible, in addition to the 13 weeks, for an additional $600 per week, which ends July 25th. And then the last is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And so this is if you are not eligible for the traditional UI program. If you're a gig worker, a 1099, you can apply for PUA. PUA is retroactive back to January 27th and ends December 31st, 2020. You are eligible for the additional $600 plus up, and in order to be found eligible for PUA, you have to go through the regular UI application process. A requirement in the CARES Act is that you have to not be eligible in order to be eligible. So you have to go through the traditional UI application process. Next slide. So next, I'm going to turn it over to my tax chief, Ryan Morley, to talk about the district shared work program. Ryan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Director. And good afternoon, everybody. I definitely relish the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics, the district shared work program. And I absolutely want to take an opportunity to give a shout out to our director, to our director of the unemployment program, Monica Madison, and to the entire team at DOES who have been doing extraordinary work in trying to get an unprecedented amount of claim volume and new programs implemented in record time. So anytime I have the opportunity, I want to make sure that I shed some light on the DOES family because this work, it is truly historic in what we're trying to do. So what is the shared work program? We're offering the shared work program at DOES as a voluntary option for district employers to provide an alternative to layoffs for businesses confronted with a temporary decline in business and those that are also experiencing a reduction in available work. The shared work program, it's been around since 2010, and it's established under the district's unemployment insurance program. The principle behind shared work is simple. Instead of laying off a percentage of your workforce as an employer to reduce cost, an employer could reduce employees' hours by the same percentage and keep the entire workforce on the job. So I wanted to go through some of the advantages for employers of enrolling in what is a voluntary shared work program in the district. You have the opportunity to keep your skilled, trained workers. You maintain product and service quality levels with your skilled workforce. Skilled and trained workforce is available when business demand increases, and I know that we're all hoping that happens very soon safely. You get to avoid the time and expense of hiring and training new employees, and you maintain employee morale by avoiding layoffs and keeping workers on the job. Now, on the employee side, what are some of the advantages of the shared work program? It provides continuous employment by reducing hours instead of total unemployment if laid off. Employees can continue to work and earn wages, and at the same time, they will receive a portion of unemployment insurance benefits. It helps employees maintain skills while working the reduced hours, and it allows for the continuation of health care and retirement benefits. Also, it avoids the difficulties related to layoffs and finding another job. So what's involved in the application process for shared work? District of Columbia employers can apply for the Shared Work Program by visiting the DOES website, and specifically the Shared Work Program page at www.does.dc.gov. Employers will submit an application that includes the affected unit or units that you would like covered under your Shared Work Plan, the number of full or part-time workers in the affected unit, the percentage of workers in the unit covered by your Shared Work Plan, and an estimated number of layoffs that would be averted by the Shared Work Plan going into effect. In addition, employers in the application process, you would have to certify that your usual weekly hours worked by eligible employees and the percentage their hours will be reduced. You would also need to provide the plan of how the employer will notify their workers, including collective bargaining unit individuals, if that is applicable to your particular business. You would also have to have the plan's expected start and end dates as a part of the application process. And then any other documents or verification information that we would need to render a determination as it relates to your Shared Work Program application. And with that, I will throw it back to you, Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. It's a really great program, and we encourage businesses to take advantage of it. So please visit the does.dc.gov website to learn more about how you can submit an application. Returning back to work. So as the district begins the process of phased reopening of the city, DOES is striving to prevent fraud and ensuring that claimants are not continuing to claim benefits when they've been offered suitable work. If there is a reason to believe a refusal or suitable work has occurred, we want people to be prepared to submit a copy of the written offer and contact us so we can help you navigate your way returning back to work. This is also very, very important because we are in the process of having employers contact us and provide information to us about their employees that are returning back to work. So we want to make sure that everybody understands what is at play, how you can return back to work, and if there are any issues that prevent you from returning back to work, so there will not be a disruption of any of the benefits that we have outlined today. Next slide, please. Just to go over a few other details, if an individual is asked to come back to work, and if they do refuse to accept suitable work without cause, benefits could be interrupted. Some of the factors that we use to determine suitable work include physical fitness and prior training, experience, earnings of the claimant, distance of the place of work and the claimant's residence, and risk involved as health, safety, and in some cases even morals or religion. What's not considered a good cause includes differences in wages and hours of work, meaning if you were working with an employer at a business and you were being paid one wage, you're asked to come back, but your wages decrease, that is not necessarily considered not a good cause. We do want you to contact us to help you navigate these issues, but that could be not considered a good cause. Differences in locality of work and transportation facilities are adequate, economical, and reasonably distant. A temporary physical disability which does not substantially interfere with the ability to work, and objections to employer or fellow workers. For more information about how to return back to work, we do ask you to visit the does.dc.gov UI webpage to learn more about returning back to work. So, Director Cook, we're going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Director Morris Hughes. I am actually going to pivot to the Deputy Mayor, and then we're going to just ask a couple of questions, but I would like to pass it along to the Deputy Mayor.
Great. So, I know we want to also, we have some viewers watching, some folks listening on the phone as well. If you are on the phone line and you have a question, if you press 0, that'll allow us to see you and put you in the queue to ask a question. So just press 0 now if you have a question. And Director and Ryan, really interested in the shared work program because I know we've done a lot of work in terms of where we are with unemployment insurance and where we are with the pandemic unemployment assistance, getting the word out about those. Shared work seems like one that takes a few more steps and really is kind of incumbent on the business to navigate it. Can you tell us kind of, as people are thinking about shared work, how do they kind of think about the typical length that they can enroll? So I know you said that your plan has to have a start date and an end date. How long do people typically enroll their business and their employees in that program? And then also, do the employees have to opt in? Can you kind of talk through some of the specifics of that? Maybe Ryan?
Yeah, sure. I'll take the second question first. For the employees, it's a requirement for employers if they have plans to move forward with a shared work plan or have the plans to submit an application, that they inform their employees that they are also, especially the employees that would be a part of the affected unit, that they want to have a percentage of reduction on. So that is actually imperative, and it's a requirement of the program that employees are notified by the employer, the shared work employer, and if they are a part of a collective bargaining unit, that they have there's a specific template that can be found on our website, and it's also available in the application process for them to provide that documentation to their union representative so that they are also aware, and that documentation is provided for our records as well. Now, in terms of length, your shared work plan is effective the date that we render a determination that your shared work plan is approved. And it is approved for the period of 1 year, 1 calendar year from the effective date.
Wow. Great. And are there reasons why, what are the kind of the typical reasons why applications are accepted, or why what are the typical problems that people run into in terms of getting their application accepted?
Great question. Well, first, I want to make sure that everybody's aware that the program guidance, the shared work program guidance, is available on the DOES website, www.does.dc.gov, under the shared work part of the website. All of the eligibility requirements for employers are available via the employer guidance that is on our website. But in my experience, what I am seeing is employer noncompliance being a barrier, ensuring that employers are up to date and current with any of their unemployment insurance tax obligations, and that, just to break it down, is that they're timely with their wage reporting and they're timely with their remittance of any tax dollars that are due on their UI tax accounts. That, for the most part, has been resolved, but it could lead to a denial. But you also, as an employer, have the opportunity, especially now during this pandemic period, to reapply once those issues have been resolved.
Director and Ryan, I had another curious question. Is there a minimum number of employees that you have to have in order to apply for the shared work program?
It has to be no less than one. It will have to be less than or more than one. It can't just be one person.
And what kind of, just kind of building on that question, what kind of businesses have applied or participate in the program? Are they generally larger employers? Are they those smaller employers that you just alluded to? What's sort of the typical applicant?
Mm-hmm. It runs the gamut. We have large employers. We have some smaller employers. What I'm seeing is a lot of doctor's offices, small businesses, dentist offices, all the way up to sports franchises. So it really runs the range.
Are you saying John Wall is on a
It's a very
shared
diverse
work program?
not him himself.
It is a very diverse group of employers that have submitted applications. It really does run the gamut.
Great. And how long can people expect, once they do apply, to hear back from DOES?
Well, by statute, we have 15 days to render a determination from application. But as we have staff that are moving towards being dedicated just for the processing and review of applications, we are getting those things turned around because we understand the urgency of getting these plans in place. And given the somewhat complex nature and the amount of information that's needed for the shared work plan, we want to make sure that you as the employer community is on the same page with us. We have all that we need in terms of the documentation, so it'll be a very smooth process to get you moved through and to get your employees back in the door.
Got it. Well, so I know there's going to be other questions. So if any of the listeners have a question, they can press 0 to ask a question about shared work or any of the programs that we talked about, or really anything that's on your mind. We also have a couple of other guests on the line, so I want to bring them in. They're 2 participants in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, and it's Kimberly and John. Kimberly and John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Great. Kimberly, you want to tell us a little bit about your story and how you are navigating the PUA program?
Sure. I am actually a creative entrepreneur in D.C. I own my own firm and typically do project work. So the 1099 that was mentioned earlier is how I typically, receive my income. I work like I said, I have a creative firm. I work with artists, small businesses, and startups here in the district. And just a number of my projects have been canceled with no definite reschedule. Nothing is being rescheduled at this particular time because everything is still up in the air because of the pandemic. So, yeah.
And Kimberly, what's the name of your firm, if you want to share that with us too?
It's Sunday Expressions Creative. I typically work, again, with artists, small businesses, and startups. I do graphic design and arts administration work.
Great. And John, you want to tell us a little bit about your story as well?
Yes. So my name is John DeVille. I'm actually a paralegal. I was employed at a plaintiff's employment law firm prior to Corona. So with respect to the courts being closed and us not actually being able to file motions and things of that nature as it relates to client cases, my hours just went down completely. So because of PUA, because initially, I'm not sure if people are aware, but most legal professionals, like either attorneys or paralegals, we're actually 1099 independent contractors. So for the most part, we're not actually eligible or automatically qualified for typical benefits such as unemployment insurance and things of that nature. So when at the federal level, when the 600 plus was implemented, I was absolutely ecstatic. That would be something that would be I would be able to actually benefit from at the local level from DOES. And with respect to being in receipt of the benefit, I believe that it only took about a week and a half, and I've been receiving benefits ever since.
Yeah, I think it took the same amount of time. I did apply because I didn't know what, there was a rumor mill. It was like, okay, they're going to do PUA. They're not going to, So I applied in mid-March for traditional unemployment insurance with the hope that, everything will be
organized and ready for the PUA. And I think when the application came out, I guess that was like the 24th of April or so. I think by that next week, I had my first payment. So from a Friday to Friday.
Yeah.
Wow. And how have you been thinking about sort of like returning to work or what you might do next as you kind of weather the pandemic? Have you been thinking about? We talk with our small business owners a lot about their pivot. Have you thought about that as well?
Definitely pivot is not a strange word in these times. So I'm looking towards more passive ways of income, as well as possibly starting a new business, which would actually be more in the realm of essential items. So from that to also, just I'm still engaging my clients that I initially worked with, who are, at this time just, being tight on their wallet, as everyone, really should be, because you don't know from day to day what is really happening. So I'm still engaging them and trying to help them figure out ways that they can pay me and actually help them figure out ways that, would not be so scary in this time.
And John, how about you?
So with respect to, I guess, getting back to normal, as soon as, I guess, the courts are able to actually implement, I guess, safety measures and protocols with respect to them actually being open at full capacity, that's really where I'm at with everything. But until then, I've been in contact with multiple attorneys outside of my firm, and just trying to see what I can pick up as far as like contract work and assist them with wills and estates and things of that nature.
Great. And I know that sometimes we're referred to as the District of Champions because of the success of some of our franchises. The mayor recently has been saying that we're also going to be the District of Comebacks. So we look forward to keeping in touch with you and John and Kimberly, just to hear about your comebacks too, and how you individually rebound from this, and from what you said, and your drive to kind of navigate this program early on. We know that you'll be part of the district's comeback, but also we can't wait to hear more about your individual comebacks as well.
Absolutely.
I'm excited about that as well.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the phone lines just to take some questions from those who've been listening in. So I want everybody who's John, Kimberly, please stick with us, and then Ryan and Unique. Don't go anywhere, because I know Ryan and Unique, hopefully these questions are all for you guys, and Sabangoy and I can just keep learning more today. So first we're going to go to Caroline. And Caroline, your line is open, and I'm told you have a question about the shared work program.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just wondering, for businesses, what the impact of the shared work program what impact it may have on our unemployment insurance tax rates if we have employees that will be added to the program.
I'll take that. So right now, under the emergency legislation that was passed, for rated employers, there is no charge to the experience rating for future years for charges that are coming under the pandemic period. Right now, under regular circumstances, the charges would be assigned to your account, but they would be at a much lower level because you would only be charged for partial benefits instead of it being a total layoff, and then you would be charged for the full amount of the weekly benefits that are paid to the eligible claimants. So right now, under the pandemic period, there's no charges being assigned under regular unemployment and shared work unemployment to rated employer accounts.
And Ryan, I know this could be an unknown, but does that extend for the full year? Because you said that the plan could be as long as a year. If they establish a shared work program, do the rate structure stay the same throughout the whole year? Do we know just yet?
Well, it's kind of a mixture between local legislation and then federal guidance. The local legislation, the coverage in terms of the charging for rated employers, that is tied to the mayor's declaration of the public health emergency in the district. But we also have been granted federal funding from DOL through 12/31. So really, it's kind of a mixture of both. But through 12/31, there should not be any charges to the rated accounts of employers. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated when you bring in reimbursing employers or those that pay dollar for dollar for the benefits that we disperse. You are charged, and what we expect back is for the amount that we have paid out of the trust fund already. But that guidance is spelled out in our materials, our shared work program materials. And I would encourage everybody, if there are questions about the shared work program, to go to the agency website. And if there are questions specific to your individual business, you can always email the shared work inbox. It's shared.work@dc.gov.
Great. And if we have any listeners with questions, you could still press 0 now to get into the queue. So if you press 0, that'll allow you to get into the queue. Unique, can you tell us a little bit, too, about, obviously, a big program that takes off tomorrow, paid family leave. What can people expect, and where can they find the latest guidance on the program?
Yep, certainly. So tomorrow morning, we will implement phase 2 of the last 18 months of work for the paid family leave program. Let's see. Tomorrow morning, what people can expect is the paid family leave benefits administration system live, where individuals can begin to file claims to receive a paid family leave benefit, either 8 weeks for bonding, so that's what we call traditionally a maternity or paternity leave, 6 weeks for significant health concern, and 2 weeks for essentially sick leave. It is an easy-to-use website. You can also file a claim over the phone. One of our greatest lessons learned from UI is to over-prepare with call takers. So we have a call center full of individuals ready, waiting, and trained up to take claims exclusively for paid family leave. There are videos, there are graphics, there's employer handbooks, employee handbooks. Every sort of resource that you can possibly think of is on the DC Paid Family Leave .dc.gov website, available for individuals. But the website goes, the actual benefits administration system goes live tomorrow. And then additionally, we're still collecting tax. So we are starting our tax collection, tax for PFL for the quarter. I believe it would be for Q2 ends July 30th. So that is ongoing and happening. We anticipate probably close to 30,000 applicants this year seeking benefits for paid family leave.
Great. Well, it sounds like it's well in hand, and it sounds like the website, again, is the best place to check that out. Unique, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know the phone number, too, for people to call if they do have questions about the paid family leave program?
I think Ryan is going to pull it up for me. Maybe Ryan, no?
Well, while we do that, I know that Commissioner Patel is on the line from ANC 2A. So, Commissioner Patel, can you hear me now? Commissioner? And I think Commissioner.
Hi, this is Commissioner Patel. They just connected us. I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. And you had a question about PUA assistance and return to work?
Yes, I did. So I have a constituent of mine who is classified as a 1099 worker, and I just went ahead and helped her process her PUA application. And the two questions I had is because we just started her processing her PUA on Friday night. I told her to call DOES on Wednesday to make sure everything flows through correctly. I wanted to know, one, how long it was going to take for them to process her PUA application, because I just don't want there to be a break in her filing her paperwork. Obviously, I couldn't file for this coming week because we just submitted all of her paperwork on Friday. So that's question number one. And then question number two, she has returned to her employer, but she is now in a part-time capacity, not a full-time capacity, due to the fact that we're in phase 2, so they don't have the same amount of business and consumer traffic coming in and out of her place of employment.
So thank you, Commissioner Patel, for that question. It sounds like her case may be a little complicated. The reason why I said that is because for PUA, PUA is traditionally for, 1099 gig workers, and we don't necessarily call the individuals they're working with as their employers. And so since you have said that the person has returned back to work and is part-time, it sounds like that claim may be a little complicated. So I don't want to give an exact number of days in which the person can expect the final processing and monetary determination of their claim. We tell people up to 21 days, but as you can see from the two individuals that were here, our guest panelists, they had theirs processed in a week. So it really depends on the complexity of your case, the documentation you have to prove income, and if you're currently working, I think that is another factor that could be complex. What I'm happy to do is if you could shoot me an email, we'd be happy to have someone look into it and have have someone from my team work with the individual.
Thank you so much, Director. As the Deputy Mayor also mentioned, please feel free if you have any questions to press 0 so that we can put you into the queue. But I did have another question for you, Ryan, or the Director, and it's related to the shared work program. Based on it's a two-part question actually. How many businesses so far have been enrolled, and through the numbers that you have, are there any best practices or information that you guys have been able to glean by the enrollments that you currently have on deck now?
All right. Well, let me go back quickly because I have the number for PFL. I want to make sure that I communicate that it's 202-899-3700, and that again is 202-899-3700 for any questions about our wonderful Office of Paid Family Leave. So as it relates to shared work, we have received, as of this morning, roughly 60 applications, and it's a little bit over 60 or 75% of those have been approved and are now going through the review and approval process, because we also have to get documentation signed in the form of a memorandum of agreement. There's different information that has to be provided to the employer, such as a master file that the employer will submit to DOES on a weekly basis that has the employees that are a part of the affected unit that they indicated. We need to know who those people are. So right now we are in the stage of working directly with our approved shared work employers to set them up for the shared work plan and making sure that we work out any kinks that they might be experiencing and answering any questions that they have. As far as best practices, I would definitely say, as I said before, to ensure that employers are up to date with their tax filings and the remittance of any payments on the UI tax side that are due. That is of utmost importance, especially as it relates to having the wages on file. If employers have missing reports in our system, and that's what we have on our record, that will only impact your own employees because we won't have those wages to determine their monetary eligibility, which will only delay the disbursement of any payments that were due under regular UI or shared work benefits. So making sure that that's in place, and then making sure that there's a plan. What I'm seeing in working with a lot of the employers on shared work is that they understand the purpose of the program, they understand its utility, but there's not a clear understanding of the guidance, and that's what we're here for. So we want to make sure that any employer that has questions, that they're emailing us, share.work@dc.gov, so we can walk you through the process and make sure that you as the employer have a plan in place for how you want to operate within the confines and the requirements of the program. So we're always here to help. We're always here to answer any questions you may have in order to get to facilitate what we think is just an amazing program that can do a lot of good in the city.
Well, one thing I've been impressed by with our partners in district government is really a willingness to work with applicants across the board. And so it sounds like for shared work, we have that spirit of cooperation as well. We're not there to just kind of give it a yes or no, but we're actually there to try to make your application successful. So Ryan, sounds like you all have taken on this similar sort of spirit of cooperation with the folks who apply.
Absolutely.
Great. So we have a question from social media about how we see phase 2 developing in DC. And so we started with phase 2 just last Monday. And so far, really kind of across the board, whether it was during our period of stay at home in phase 1 and now in phase 2, we've seen a lot of compliance with the guidance that we've put out from the public health officials. So DC Health has worked really hard on making sure that the guidance is as clear as possible on coronavirus.dc.gov/phase 2 in order for individuals, whether they're residents or businesses or employees, to be able to follow that guidance and make sure that we all stay safe. Obviously, wearing a mask is one of the best ways that we can help our neighbors and our city get through this, but also that hygiene that we talked about early on, washing your hands often with soap and water, all of that is helpful and accrues to our benefit. What we've also seen is that businesses have been pretty clear with their employees that and their customers that this is kind of our shared responsibility. And so for the folks who are listening, we want to thank you for that because it is so important that we keep reinforcing the rules and the guidance, not simply so that we can have something to enforce, but so that we do see compliance. So I know I've seen it when I've gone out to restaurants or even to some of our streeteries where we've seen restaurants expand out into the sidewalks or the alleys or even the streets in order to expand their capacity. We've seen people take seriously the social distancing, the mask wearing, and the disinfection/infection control that we really need to see. So we have another question from someone, I guess, on social media as well, asking about the biggest challenges during COVID. That's actually an interesting question. The biggest challenges, I think, well, I'll go to Unique next. But for me, I think the biggest challenges have just been understanding the public health guidance and how you kind of break that down into guidance that people can use So, for example, a restaurateur was asking me about mask wearing, and I'm looking over at Mike from Octo, who helps us maintain the website and make sure that we keep the guidance updated as frequently as possible. But that restaurateur was saying that it's easier for them to say, if you're on your feet, you have to have a mask. If you're in your seat, you only can take off your mask when your server, your waiter, waitress is not at the table. And that was like a simple way for people to kind of understand where you have to wear a mask and where you can take it off in order to obviously eat or drink. So I think that a lot of times just that explaining for us is the challenge. And then also just making people realize that there is an impact. Sometimes if it doesn't affect us personally, it's hard for us to understand that it is our shared responsibility to wear a mask, to wash our hands often, to really kind of respect the rules of the road when it comes to going to a business or a public place. But I think that overall, we've seen a great amount of compliance, and the enforcement hasn't had to follow because people have been complying as much as they have. So Unique, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your toughest challenge during COVID?
Yeah, my toughest challenge, and John, this probably will not be a surprise to you, but I wish that our federal partners were as good of partners to us as we are to them. There have been 24 rule or policy changes related to unemployment insurance, any of the additional benefit programs that have been provided in the CARES Act, shared work, since the pandemic started. And we always, gracefully, to the extent possible, responsibly and gracefully, we implement the changes. We never talk about how challenging it could be to receive policy guidance on the fly from the Fed. But it has been very, very, very challenging, not just with me, but not just with DOES in the District of Columbia, but other states across this country, getting so many policy changes during really a state of an emergency when we're trying to get benefits out the door. And so I don't rarely ever talk about it, but I think it's important that people know the sort of constraints that we are under to seamlessly implement a program, and folks just don't have any idea of how many curveballs were thrown. Now, luckily, I work in an agency full of Michael Jordans, and so they always rise to the occasion. But the biggest challenge for us has been the constant, confusing, nonsensical, non-practical guidance that we get from the Fed, sometimes daily, on what we should be doing in these programs.
You know what? Thank you so much, Director. I think that's really helpful, and that you were shared that information. I'm also curious, because this is a really good question even for our guests on the phone that spoke to us about their business and their experience with PUA. What has been the most challenging thing during COVID for you two?
Maintaining sanity. I think that has been a challenge. But I will say that in working or in processing my PUA, DOES has been amazing. I will definitely say that. Every individual that I've spoken to on the phone was just, as helpful as they could be with the information that they had at the time. And I received emails, I received phone calls, and was really appreciative of that. But I think a challenge has been, really trying to pivot what you think your purpose is, So in serving my purpose in life, if right now I'm having to figure out, okay, what does that look like if I pivoted to in this time of the pandemic, and how do I still serve the people that I have been charged in my business to serve in what this uncertainty looks like.
That's
And
all.
John?
Yeah, I would say the most challenging thing for me would be just trying to find something, trying to stay busy in anticipation for the new normal. To pretty much piggyback off what Kimberly said, I believe that everyone at DOES was absolutely helpful. Every time that I called, I was able to get a proper and I would say fast resolution, for lack of a better word. So I guess that was like, and still is like my issue with trying to stay busy and trying to plan ahead after this is over.
Definitely appreciate John and Kimberly, you sharing your stories today. Like I said, we're going to be the District of Comebacks, so we're excited to keep following your stories as we go forward. And so, Sabangwe, Ryan, Unique, definitely thank you for your time today. I definitely have to, kind of build off something that Unique said. She said that there were 24 different rule or policy changes. And to that, I would say the thing that could help us navigate those in the future are another number, and that's 2 senators. So we'll keep pushing to be the 51st state. For now, we just want to thank everybody for the work that you do every day, for sticking together during the pandemic. And I know that it's a holiday weekend, but we really want to encourage everybody to have a safe, healthy, and socially distanced 4th of July. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. We'll make sure that we post information both on the coronavirus.dc.gov website as well as does.dc.gov. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.